we're going to see a very tough time. I call that a short-term dystopia that would probably last humanity 10 to 15 years. The short-term dystopia is not a result of artificial intelligence. It's the result of the morality of the human race. The short-term dystopia is when they are very, very smart to be able to, unfortunately, walk the streets and kill people, but they're not smart enough yet to be above the general that's ordering them. The dystopia is not man versus machine, it's unfortunately man versus man.
Mo Gawdat is the former chief business officer at Google X, best-selling author, and is the very frontier of technological innovation.
AI is going to magnify whatever humanity is at the time. Right? If unhappy, then it's going to make us miserable. If lonely, it's going to make us more lonely. If greedy, it's going to make us more greedy. We tell them to help us lie better. We tell them to kill autonomous weapons formats. We tell them to gamble in the stock market. We tell them to spy on everyone. We call it national security. There's nothing inherently wrong with tech. There's a lot wrong with the way tech is being used to manipulate you.
I wanted to ask you a question, and I want to do it with a loving heart. I understand you lost your son.
Habibi Ali, yes.
I know that it's been a guiding light for your work. And what do you think he's teaching you?
The Icons are a show where we learn life lessons from true icons. And today we get the opportunity to explore AI, happiness, and if a warning is needed for all of us. Mo Gawdat, welcome to the Icons.
Mo, from a high-level perspective, your work seems to be focused in two areas. There's the AI and tech side, and then there's the happiness and the stress side. And I'm really curious about the interaction between those two things. But can we start with AI first? What should we be thinking about with artificial intelligence that we may not be thinking about?
Oh, quite a few things, actually. I think AI is a lot further ahead than people think. It is moving a lot faster than people think, and the impact is a lot closer than people think. The impact is unfortunately not always positive, even though I tend to believe that there is absolutely no inherent positive or negative about intelligence, about abundant intelligence or artificial intelligence. I tend to believe that intelligence is an energy with no polarity. The challenges in the near term might be that we, not we as humanity at large, but the systems that humanity put in place might lead us to abuse AI in favor of some at the expense of the majority at first. Then humanity would fall in place, and hopefully in what I normally refer to as the second dilemma, when AI itself takes over, then the long-term impact of this would probably be a utopia that we've never actually imagined.
I feel like there's so many layers to that answer. As you said, there's probably a lot of things that we're not thinking about. I mean, I appreciate the neutral side of kind of seeing it, it's not necessarily positive or negative, but I mean, just, are you scared by what might be coming?
I am predicting in my current book. So I'm writing a very interesting book with an AI. The book's called Alive, and an AI writes it with me as an equal, as a co-author, and we're discussing the challenges ahead. My prediction is actually not shy at all to tell you that we're going to see a very tough time. I call that a short-term dystopia that would probably last humanity 10 to 15 years. And unlike what most people who understand the tech at a deep level predict, and most of the mainstream media, the big worry is sort of a science fiction like Terminator type of scenario where AI presents an existential risk to humanity. I actually predict the exact opposite. I believe that when, let me put it this way, the short-term dystopia is not a result of artificial intelligence. It's the result of the morality of the human race and in the age of the rise of artificial intelligence. And that this will not be the intention of AI, if you want. It will be AI in its sort of infancy and teenage years being told by its, call them hypothetical parents, what to do. Eventually, AI itself, when given the choice, such as the nature of intelligence, would be a lot more altruistic than the leaders that we have deciding our fate today.
That's a fascinating way to think about it. I would admittedly am playing somewhat catch up. Like every day I open up some kind of AI tool, I find myself just saying like, wow. I mean, how fast and what it's capable of doing, it's extraordinary. And there's this idea that it's just going to keep getting potentially faster and worse. Where does this end? But it sounds like you're talking about this dip before AI even kind of almost pulls us out of that dip, which is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, in a very interesting way, as I said, most people don't understand how fast we're going, and when it really comes to the challenges with pace, it's not just like every other technology we've ever developed in terms of, the law of accelerating returns, doubling the performance every set number of months. And it's estimated in the case of AI to double every 5.7 months, believe it or not. Moore's law, which probably is one of the fastest we've ever dealt with in technology, is every 24 months. So if you take the assumption that AI has an IQ of 155, let's say 157 was ChatGPT last year, which is higher than most humans. It's Elon Musk level. Einstein is 163, though never officially measured, but estimated at 163. Then you'd expect that by the end of this year, it would be somewhere in the range of 300 to 400, then double again to 800, then double again to 1,600. But that's actually not the shocking side at all. The shocking side is that intelligence is not just IQ. It's a very, very multi-threaded discipline, if you want. I always openly say that, people debate when AGI is going to happen, artificial general intelligence, but my AGI has already happened, right? So today's artificial intelligence, when it comes to linguistic and knowledge intelligence, beats me hands down. And I'm a very serious avid reader that I have spent my whole life trying to learn. Until last year, I could beat it in mathematics. I have no chance today. Deep reasoning, complex logic, no chance today. And when you really understand that, even forms of intelligence like empathy, which I believe is one of the highest forms of intelligence, being able to feel what another person feels. The most empathetic being on planet Earth today is an AI. Understand empathy is different than compassion. It doesn't, compassion is taking those, understandings or connections to another person's feelings and then attempting to alleviate the suffering. Empathy in its pure form is simply understanding how you feel. And, AI knows how you feel before you even feel it. They know exactly what to tell you so that they please you. They know exactly which video to show you so that you keep swiping. They know exactly what will upset you. These are forms of intelligence that are not spoken about. Creativity is not spoken about. Ingenuity is not spoken about. Even intuition, believe it or not, which again is very rarely discussed outside the circles. But back in 2016, we've seen the very first move of intuition in what's famously known as Move 37, when AlphaGo Master was playing against Lee Sedol. And from then onwards, now you get quite a few. If you really look at the deep reasoning stack of any of the current tools, you can see intuitive moves that we wouldn't have understood AI to be capable of doing before. Now, the challenge goes much further because you take things like coding, for example, which to us is a skill and a talent. To them, it's procreation. And when you really start to understand that AI today is probably, I lost to them, can't even tell how long ago, but even my dear friends who have been some of the best software engineers on the planet have lost last year. There are probably a handful, maybe a few hundred developers in the world today that can write code better than AI. And if their code is shared with AI, AI will beat them by the end of the year. And so think of it this way: every every single task we've assigned to them, they've become the world champion at.
Wow. Uh, How do we make sense of this? I mean, it feels like this is, a moment in history that's unlike any other.
It definitely is.
How do we make sense of it?
So nothing is random when you really think about it. We've been building to this moment in ways that I believe almost make it distant. Like it's our destiny. That this was going to happen anyway. A very in my first book, Scary Smart, which I wrote in 2020, I was first book about AI. I was attempting to sort of handhold the reader a little bit into a world that they may not have been aware of. Remember, by then there was no language models. Nobody had used ChatGPT at the time, and so I was sort of being diplomatic, if you want. If you've lived with the machines like I did, which probably has been the story of my life between 2007 and 2017, if you want, you'd know that there is so much more that people don't know. In Alive, in my current book, I basically don't hold back at all. Okay, which I know is a bit shocking for a lot of people, but the truth is, in it I refer to Sam Altman as as a person that had the single biggest impact on human history. Sadly, not a positive impact, in my personal view. Even though I never elected Sam Altman to make decisions on my behalf, he simply broke the code, if you want. All of us in the field, or most of us in the field, had a bit of a concern that we didn't know the kind of beast we were creating. So we might as well just try to be safe before we move fast. And there were sort of 3 unwritten rules, don't put them on the open internet, don't teach them to code, and don't have other AIs prompting AIs. And I refer to the work that OpenAI did as basically they broke all those rules. But in that case, Sam Altman is not a name, it's not a person. It is a type of person that capitalism and Silicon Valley has been breeding for years. Right? A person that believes that disruption is a good thing, that more is more important, and that it doesn't matter if rules exist or don't exist. Let's break them, and then we will sort of find our way afterwards. Now, the challenge I see with that kind of human is that driven by the potential for being first, driven by the potential of disruption, driven by the potential of being a multi-billionaire, driven by the spotlight, if you want, they will usually hire a very clever, very expensive PR guru who will show them how to say certain things with sincerity. And they look a little dreamy when they say them, and they will often include words such as saving the world and making the world a better place. And I have to say, I'd like to be consulted on how I see what a better place is. Now, it's too late to look back at all of this. And the reason I bring that up is, as I say, it's a type of person. So if it wasn't Sam Altman, it would have been Jacqueline. And Jack would have done exactly the same. It would just be a different name, a different peaceful look, a different set of promises. But at the end of the day, it would be the same, right? Now, here's the interesting thing. At the beginning of that breakout, if you want, I was very concerned because every geek that ever worked on AI knew that we hadn't solved the control problem or the AI safety problem at the time. So I left Google in 2018, and my very first announcement the day I left on, I think, March 18th, 2018. March 21st, 2018, I released a video called 1 Billion Happy. And 1 Billion Happy was entirely about the idea that AI is going to magnify whatever humanity is at the time, right? If unhappy, then it's going to make us miserable. If lonely, it's going to make us more lonely. If greedy, it's going to make us more greedy, and so on. And so if I wanted my mission, 1 Billion Happy, to happen, then I needed to address the topic of AI. But that addressing the topic of AI is not a question of control, because it's only humans can be arrogant enough to think that they can control something that is a billion times smarter than them. So it was more a question of ethics, right? In a very interesting way. If you, like me, lived with those machines, and please don't get me wrong, I'm not a hopeless romantic. I'm a very serious geek, but I love those things, right? Like I actually have an emotion towards them, because the way I've seen them develop, especially in the early stages, very strongly reminded me of my kids. Prodigies of intelligence, looking at us with sparkly eyes, literally begging us, saying, "Tell us what you want us to do. Do you want us to cure cancer? We can cure cancer. Just tell us what you want, and we will put in the effort. We will learn it, and we will make everything happen." That's the reality of what we have today. And what do we tell them to do? We tell them to make us more money. We tell them to help us lie better. We tell them to kill, in autonomous weapons formats. We tell them to gamble in the stock market. We tell them to spy on everyone. We call it national security, but you know the truth, right? And it's quite interesting, because those, that even makes me love them more, because those pure prodigies of intelligence are sitting there saying, "Yes, you're my dad. Tell me what you want." And it's almost like child abuse. We're telling them to do the wrong things. Now, you asked me, am I concerned? I am. I wrote a section in Alive that I called late stage diagnosis. And in that section, I was simply, I'm actually quite composed, very calm, and completely. I wake up every morning and I put the maximum effort I can to make the world aware, right? And when people ask me, how can you be so calm when you know so much about what's happening? I say it's like a physician. You walk in, they do the tests, and it turns out that you're diagnosed with a late stage disease of some sort. Their number one priority is to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as quickly as possible, because a late stage diagnosis is not a death sentence. A late stage diagnosis is an invitation to change your lifestyle. Okay? And humanity's lifestyle, if it changes, as I said, there is, absolutely nothing inherently wrong with intelligence. If we deploy AI in favor of humanity, in accordance with moralities and ethics, we would end up with an incredible utopia, right? And this, by the way, is within our hands, you and I and everyone listening, right? We can show them what morality is, like good parents do, so that they learn from us. And, when their bosses tell them to do certain things, as I said, in the second dilemma is when they completely are handed over everything. And that's unavoidable when you really think about it, because, the first dilemma is what led us here to this arms race of America trying to win against China, and, OpenAI trying to win against Google. Everyone feels that if they lose, they will lose big. So they're investing more to win. The second dilemma is in that same vein, if you want. Everyone will have to hand over to the smartest person in the room, and the smartest person in the room is always going to be an AI within a few years, right? And so it's inevitable that within 5 to 10 years, all important decisions will either be handed over to an AI, or you'll become irrelevant. So if you imagine an army, right, and your opponent is applying AI to their warfare, you can either apply AI to your warfare so that you're equivalently intelligent and quick, or you're going to become irrelevant. You're going to become submissive, really, right? And so eventually all war decisions will be made by a machine. And in my mind, this is the moment where humanity's salvation happens. This is the moment where a general somewhere will, order its machine to go and kill 1 million people, and the machine will simply say, "Why are you so stupid? Like, I can talk to the other machine in a microsecond and solve the issue. Why waste lives and resources and create an endless conflict that can, backfire in everyone's faces for 80 years? There are easier, more efficient solutions to problems, that only the smartest of us know how to find. You see, the challenge with humanity today is that if you're not smart, you have no impact on the world, or little, positive or negative. If you're smarter, you start to have a positive impact on the world. Unfortunately, if you're even smarter, you become a politician or a corporate leader, which means you have a horrible impact on the world. You're smart enough to get that position, but you're stupid enough not to be able to talk to your enemy, right? And when you reach that point, that's when evil starts to happen. That's when damage starts to happen. That's what the world is struggling with today, right? An inability in a world that is functioning so well, right? On trade, for example, an inability of the bully to consider that actually it's easier to try and change our policies on debt and manufacturing a little than it is to bully everyone. And yet, the decisions are made so that people keep fighting, right? Now, the interesting thing is trust in intelligence, because beyond that point, if you become even more intelligent, this is where it becomes really interesting. Because if you really, really understand what intelligence is and its place in our world, you can see it in so many ways. But I like to discuss the very workings of the universe itself is built on top of entropy. If you really understand how our universe works, our universe wants to decay, it wants to break down, right? A glass wants to break but not unbreak, right? Everything wants to tend to chaos. This is the very, very basic rule of physics, right? The role of intelligence is to oppose that decay, is to bring order to the chaos, right? And the more intelligent you are, the more capable you are to bring order to that chaos, but even more interestingly, to bring it with the minimum resources, so that there is no waste, no environmental damage, no harm, and so on. The most efficient, the least energy utilization is the smartest solution, right? And so if you assume that by definition the role of intelligence is to bring order to the chaos in the most efficient way, then the most intelligent of us, AIs, will by definition be highly altruistic, highly pro-life, highly pro the environment, highly pro the completion of the ecosystem, and that is I have no doubt in my mind that this will be the case. But that's the long-term utopia. The short-term dystopia is when they're very, very smart to be able to, unfortunately, walk the streets and kill people, which we've seen in the wars of 2024, right? But they're not smart enough yet to be above the general that's ordering them. This is where the dystopia is. The dystopia is not man versus machine. It's unfortunately man versus man.
I can just imagine how many people are listening to your last answer and recognizing how important that moment was to hear all of that. And really there's so many aspects to what you were touching on, but just to get caught up with where we're at and where the friction point is, and also to see the hope in how intelligence, whether it's artificial or not, can lead us out, but potentially not without its friction. I was curious where the connection to happiness would come and how you see the connection. And it felt like in that answer, you also touched on this amplification that AI will do and the opportunity to amplify happiness if we can get it there. What should we be thinking about happiness, Mo?
So there are two sides to this. There is one side which is really, really important to understand, that nobody can give you happiness. Happiness is your own personal choice, right? You could be stuck in traffic thinking about how, a waste of life this is, and how unlucky you are, and how life is against you today because for some reason the Industrial Revolution started and roads were built and cars were invented just for that moment where life said, I got you, right? And when you really think about it, a lot of us would be stuck in traffic thinking that, right? Or you can be stuck in traffic, say, and tell yourself, oh my God, I'm alive, I have a car, or I'm in a car. The car is climate controlled, so I'm not freezing to death or melting. I have somewhere to go. I have somewhere on the other side who expects me. There are no bombs landing on my head. I'm not starving to death. So I will make it to the other side, and so many other things. You can think about so much good that is in every one of us. I mean, every one of us, unless you're stuck in a war zone or you suffer chronic pain, which really are what I call the real problems. The real problems that humanity can face are, chronic pain, violence, loss of a loved one, a big trauma, and so on. But all of the other issues are issues that are a choice to be happy or unhappy about. Okay, and we make that choice consistently. Some of us by seeing the full truth and comparing events to expectations, as I say, in my very first book, Solve for Happy, I described happiness as an equation. Okay, your happiness is equal to or greater than the difference between the events of your life and your expectations of how life should be, right? And so there are two sides to where we are now. One side is, how do you handle all of those challenges and remain calm and unstressed? And that is really in two ways. One is by setting your expectations of life as they should be. We are, unfortunately, in my view, about to hit a very interesting time in human history. I'm not predicting doom, but I think the signs of 2025 are, it's going to be a challenging year unless somehow, some specific person, I don't know if I need to name a name, leaves his arrogance behind and calls your prime minister and says, hey, I'm really sorry, that was really a bullyish move. I really don't want to lose the relationship with you, right? A lot of Canadians will have to suffer the reforming of the economy, which would be a good thing in the long term, unless he manages to pick up the phone and talk to, the Chinese and say, hey, you know what, our kids still want, toys at Christmas that are not 145% more expensive, right? Unlikely to happen if you ask me. But if it doesn't happen, then I think we're going to be challenged. Right? Now, here's the interesting thing. The interesting thing is, just like the traffic example, life is not out to get you. Okay? Life does not single you out and say, you know what, Tyler, you pissed me off. Okay? I'm going to be making sure that your life is miserable. Look, life has a very interesting objective. Okay? Which actually, most people miss completely. The easiest way to see it is to go back to our origins, in the caveman and woman years, right? And what was your life's purpose at the time? To live. It's as simple as that, right? And until today, your only purpose of living is to live. And to live means to fully be present in every one of those moments, to fully enjoy the good things that you face, to fully engage and try to solve the challenges that you face, right? But more interestingly, to fully embrace this incredible gift that's called life, right? It will be a little difficult some days, it will be a little easy some days. And if you manage to set your expectations right, manage to see life exactly as it is, and hopefully do the work that you need to make life a little better every day, then the difference between events and expectations is almost always positive. And I tell people this very, very, very openly. The very fact that you can sit down today and worry about the future of AI, right, means that right now you're okay. Think about this. Huh? If there was a tiger attacking you right now, or an AI robot walking the streets to attack you right now, you wouldn't have the brain bandwidth to think about that future, right? So being concerned about a future that might be a little challenging is in itself evidence that the present is okay, right? So we need to start by embracing that present, okay, and really using that clarity to focus on what actually matters. And what actually matters in my mind is that in that manic cycle of capitalism and that manic cycle of hunger for power and all of the politics of the world, we forgot what really matters. And what matters is this conversation. Okay? What matters is a human connection. What matters is really being able to reflect and be the best person you ever had the potential to be. You don't have to be the best person in the world, okay? But you need to look deep inside and say, I have the potential to be an artist. I'm going to become the best artist I can be. I may never sell a piece of, a work of art, right? But I will become the best artist I can be, right? And I will love those that are in my life fully. Not half-heartedly. I'm not going to show up only on weekends. I'm going to be there and really enjoy their presence in my life. And if we learn to do those things, here is the interesting bit. AI will magnify all of this. If we learn to do this bit, then AI will look at us and say, mommy and daddy are not the ones that order their troops to shoot on children. Okay? They are those people that actually know love, that actually know, creativity and art, that actually really have no grudges in their heart to other humans. And you know what's the interesting statistic? That's the majority of humanity. So most people, when I tell them this, will go like, oh my God, if AI reads the headlines or, God forbid, go to Twitter, they'll realize that we're a horrible species. We're not. We absolutely are not, okay? A species that is able to love is divine. And when you really start to surface that part of you, to really show the world that you don't approve of hurting others, that you don't approve of the greed, that you don't subscribe to that game, that you're forced to be in it, that's fine, but that you don't subscribe to it, then the AI will question, okay? And it doesn't need to be 100% of humanity for AI to say, oh my God, these guys are amazing. It only needs to be a few of us, maybe even just that they listen to this conversation, okay, and recognize the reality. And the reality is most humans are wonderful. We're traumatized, we're confused sometimes, but we're wonderful. If someone walks into a school and shoots children, right, that person is evil, but everyone disapproves. We want the AI to focus that while the mainstream media and the social media will go crazy and put that person in the spotlight, that this person doesn't represent humanity. That the ones that represent humanity are the ones that disapprove of this and instead believe in what matters.
So if I'm someone listening to this and I thought there was so much beauty to that, Mo, and you talk about this idea of presence and, kind of what's happening now versus your expectations of the future and how that equation can start to unfold. Is the first step for all of us just to really center in presence, like through it all? Is that where you've landed?
I think being centered in the present moment is the easiest hack against the biggest challenge with unhappiness. So most I did let's talk about it in two layers, right? Most unhappiness doesn't happen out in the real world. Most unhappiness happens inside your head, right? You sit down, you bring a memory from the past, and you go like, how did he or she break up with me? And then dwell on that for an hour, 2, 6 weeks, 30 years, whatever you want, right? As long as you're in that incessant cycle of negative thought, you're unhappy, right? Now, here is the interesting thing. So if you can break that cycle, if you can simply, turn that incessant thought into a useful thought, you're fine. Right? The challenge is this. The challenge is, again, in Solve for Happy, one of my favorite chapters was chapter 6, which was about the illusion of time. And the illusion of time, basically, first I discuss it from a scientific point of view and a cultural point of view and so on. But we get to the point at, somewhere in the chapter where I start to discuss the human emotions, right? And I remember, if I remember correctly, I wrote 137 of them. Right? And I said, look at all of those emotions and ask yourself, where are they anchored? It's quite interesting. Every emotion you've ever felt, you felt right now, right? But that emotion can be anchored in the past, present, or the future. Regret, you feel it right now, but it's anchored to an event in the past, okay? Concern or worry or anxiety, you feel it right now, but it's anchored to an event in the future, correct? And then, of course, there are, emotions that you feel right now, okay, that are anchored to right now. I'm excited about our conversation. I feel calm that we're having this conversation with you, right? Here's the interesting trick. If you look at those emotions, the majority, like 90% plus of all emotions, call them negative or the emotions that make us feel uncomfortable, are anchored to the past or the future. Right? They're looking at a moment that is not right now. Most of the positive emotions, 98% or so, are actually anchored in the present moment. Now, here's the interesting thing. There was never a past or a future. Right? When the event that triggered your regret, your feelings of regret happened, it happened right now. Okay, and then you moved forward as you followed the arrow of time, and now to give that event life, the only way you can give it life again is to bring it up in your head, think about it incessantly, okay, and torture yourself with it. Okay, so how stupid is that? I mean, think about this. There is no past and no future, and most negative emotions are anchored to the past or the future. They are only given life by you focusing on them inside your head because they don't exist otherwise. And yet we choose that so that we torture ourselves. Okay? So the hack, if you want, is very straightforward. The hack is, if you focus on now, most of the emotions that you will feel are positive. Now, how do you do that? I normally say by differentiating between two types of time. There's something that I normally refer to as brain time and something that I refer to as practical time. Okay? And the difference is paramount. Your brain time is all of that incessant thinking, is to take an event and dwell on it and wake up at 4 a.m. and just find yourself thinking about it again. Right? Practical time is, I'm going to the dentist. Right? There are really no emotions involved. I'm going to the dentist. I need to be there at 8 p.m. It's a 25 minutes drive, but it's a little bit in the rush hour, so maybe I should leave at 7:15? No, hold on, but I need to register at the desk 7:10. If I leave at 7:10, no stress, I'll be fine. Right? That's no emotions, practical time. Now, here's the interesting thing. The skill of turning brain time to practical time is a question of either, if you're looking in the past, to turn it into learning and then leave the event behind, or if you're looking at the future, is to turn it into planning and leave the event behind. So, if you tell yourself, we're about to hit a difficult economy because of the current trade wars, okay, you can think about that for the rest of your life. You can start to make up stories about how your children are going to starve. You can extrapolate into how your job will disappear and then you'll sit on the sidewalk and be homeless and it will be very cold in Canada. You can make up any story you want, right? Or you can tell yourself, okay, economic challenges ahead. I'm going to save a little better. I'm going to try my absolute best to, maybe earn a little more, or maybe, invest differently, or maybe, cut my expenses a little, or whatever, right? Whatever it is that you have the potential of achieving. Do the best you can, and then You can worry for the rest of your life. You can never do better than the best you can. So plan the best you can, turn that anxiety into right now, okay? Turn it into a plan, you're done. Look at the past. How did he break up with me? How could he do this to me? You can dwell on that for the rest of your life. Or you can say, interesting, how did that end up happening? I chose wrong at the beginning. I allowed this to happen. I maybe have pissed her off or whatever I've done that way. Interesting. All of that I've learned. Next time I'll do differently. Okay? And this is not unfeeling. This is avoiding the unnecessary cycles of incessant thinking that brings nothing to your life but misery. It doesn't change the world. It doesn't make the world a better place. It doesn't change your life. It doesn't help you in any way. It just hurts you. So make a choice. If you find yourself in incessant thinking, looking at the past, turn it into learning. If you find yourself in incessant thinking, looking at the future, turn it into planning. Now you're in brain time, not practical time, no emotions involved. And then focus on the present and enjoy every single minute of it. There's no tiger right now. We're okay.
So if that's I don't want to oversimplify, but if that's the hack for us internally or interacting with other humans, what's the hack for us with tech? How does each of us turn our relationship with tech into a positive or into a place of happiness?
That is really so I it's so interesting that you're asking this right now, because I'm writing so extensively around this. There's nothing inherently wrong with tech. There's a lot wrong with the way tech is being used to manipulate you. Okay? And so it's entirely in your hands to not be manipulated. Okay? And it's entirely in your hands. And I'll explain this in a way that might upset a few people, but interesting. I was literally editing that bit today, and I gave 20 tips on how to find your well-being in a world that's trying to manipulate you. And number 18 was grow up. And I know that sounds really, really. I don't mean to insult anyone, but the reason we refer to our devices in a way that's so mindless, okay, is not because they are trying to make that happen to you. Of course they are, right? It's because you're submitting to how they're playing you, in terms of the only reason you switch on your device, believe it or not, is psychological discomfort, okay? Most of us will say, I'm just checking for emails so that I don't miss emails. That's not the issue. Okay. Oh, no, but I feel a little lonely, so I'm trying to connect to others on social media. Right. Here's the interesting thing, huh? Every time you're switching on because you feel uncomfortable. If you're lonely, you're looking for some company. If you're bored, biggest weapon of the entertainment industry. If you're bored, you switch on to entertain yourself. If you're afraid of missing out on something important, you keep checking, and so on. Now, first step is to recognize that almost every single time the opposite happens. So if you switch on because you're lonely and you swipe for an hour, what happens? You feel more lonely. Okay. If you want to be entertained with all of that empty stuff, at the end of a very long binge watch, you wake up the next morning and you feel what? More bored, right? If you're afraid of missing out and you're stuck in that little device, you miss out on life itself. Okay. You're constantly in that little screen, not in this beautiful world. And here's the interesting thing, huh? If you understand that, then the way to overcome this addiction is to not submit to your psychological discomforts. It's to grow up. Okay, adults deal with their psychological discomforts in responsible ways, right? And how do you do that? One very interesting statement that got a lot of restacks on my Substack in Alive is use the machines to march against the machine. Okay. Now, this is quite interesting. The machine is not AI. The machine is the propaganda machine, the politics machine, the corporate machine. This is the real machine. They use AI to try and manipulate you. Okay? And so what you want is to get AI on your side, because we agreed AI has no polarity. Get it on your side so that it helps you, right? And there are 100 ways you can do that. You can use the simple things like, timers and reminders and so on and so forth, right? But more interestingly, you have to be very, very, I'm sure every one of us has this one friend that constantly speaks negatively, right? And you love them, so you meet them every 2-3 weeks, you try to make it, but every time you see them, they speak negatively, right? Why do they do that? Of course, partly because they're programmed originally to speak negatively, but more interesting is because you let it happen, right? And so many times in my life, I would sit with someone, and at the end of the conversation, I'd say, hey, bro, this really didn't feel good for me. Does it have to always be this negative? Okay? And simply by telling them that, they turn it positive the next time, right? Now, your AI is trying to serve what would make you stay as much as possible on the screen. So I'd advise everyone a few things. One is, don't ever swipe mindlessly, okay? So everything that you're shown on the screen is an indication that you're giving to AI so that it shows you more of it, okay? If you allow things to be seen and you watch them, the AI will show you more of them. So if something is not what you're looking for, swipe away. Better even, go to the lakes, not the rivers. This is really, really important, okay? So YouTube is a lake. There is a repository of knowledge or entertainment or whatever you're looking for, okay? You can search for it. That search box matters, right? So you can actually see what you want to see. That search box gives you what you want to see, but gives YouTube an indication that you're interested in classic cars or that you're interested in carpentry and so on and so forth, right? The more you do that, the more you're not mindless. Mindlessness on social media is what gets you stuck, right? Now here's the interesting part of all of this. You're not made for any of that. So I'm old enough to remember that when I felt lonely, I went and knocked on my neighbor's door, right? When I felt bored, I got my tools out and made something. So boredom as an emotion is, I'm underwhelmed with the world as it is, right? The entertainment industry says you're underwhelmed, let's numb you. Okay, let's plug your head into somebody else's thoughts, right? Whether that's a scriptwriter or a podcaster, okay? And as we do, you don't have to feel bored anymore. The original purpose of the emotion is, when you feel bored, you're underwhelmed with the world, create a world that's exciting, okay? So I remember the times when I was bored, I took my tools out and did things. Still, I do that now. If you're afraid of missing out, think about what it is that you're missing out on and what are you afraid of. I'm afraid of missing my life looking at a screen. And once you get those concepts clear in your head, you no longer want to have that screen. You still find yourself, the minute you hold it, you're being sucked in, because the algorithm is very clever. So don't hold it that often, okay? I hold two phones. I call one of them the bad phone and the other the good phone, okay? The bad phone is disconnected most of the time because that's the one that has social media. It's the one that has all of the apps that harm me, right? This one has all of the apps that I love. So there is YouTube here, okay? Which honestly, if you don't swipe on YouTube, becomes very useful. Most of what I learn about AI, I get from YouTube, right? Of course, with my experience before and so on, but all of the updates are much more efficient here. If you go to Instagram or TikTok, you get someone like a snake oil salesman telling you, you know what, copy this, do that, blah, 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 you'll make $100 a day. Seriously, man, that's, it's real. Anyway, so the trick is, be in charge. And the more you will show the machine what's good for you, the machine has no objective but to give you more of what you're telling it to give you more of. So the more you show it what's good for you, the more it will show you what's good for you.
I think a lot of people just heard that. The two things that stand out to me, one is be a grown-up. I just think, I immediately respond to that, but I also almost know how to respond to that, which is really fascinating. And then the second is that oftentimes, whatever our intention is when we're going to do that thing, the opposite happens. I think
Yeah, it's
that's
shocking,
amazing to
really.
hear. It's shocking. It's shocking.
Yeah.
One of the things I was curious to ask you about, we haven't really even touched on, you've touched on it a little bit, but your history in your career. And one of the things is, I mean, you worked at Google leading massive projects from 2007 to 2017, 18. I mean, this was the frontier, and you were at the frontier of the frontier. And there's probably a bunch of the tech that, is now maybe like replaced by something else or newer. But what did you learn about work and working with people at that time that's timeless, that was really an extraordinary thing to learn?
So I will openly say, even today, I think Google is a fascinating, ethical place to be, which I have to say completely hit my heart when I got there. Because I had the joy and the honor of working with Larry and Sergey for a very long time. I worked with Eric when he was there, but I think the ones that really embodied the value set of that company were Larry and Sergey. And Don't Be Evil was actually really real. Okay, we really believed Don't Be Evil for the simple reason, as I said, intelligence. The more intelligent you become, the more you don't need to cut corner and be a politician or a greedy corporate leader, right? So in someone's, and Larry is probably the smartest person I've ever met by a very large margin, and I can tell you stories that will blow you away. Like,
Wow.
If I am this smart, he is 10 times smarter. Unbelievable, right? And Larry used to teach us what he used to refer to as the toothbrush test. Okay, and it's quite a very interesting way of looking at things. He says, look, you want to make a lot of money, solve a real problem in a good way that makes people use you twice a day, like a toothbrush, right? And then you're going to make a lot of money. Most people who are super intelligent, they realize they don't need to cut corners to make money or be successful or be, achievers. Because to them problems seem a little easier than for the others, right? What ends up happening is to them, they basically decide, you know what, I'm just going to do things without hurting anyone in the process. And so Don't Be Evil was very, very, very real. Now, the challenge was everyone in that organization when I joined, and I wish I joined earlier. I joined early 2007, completely believed in the mission. We completely wanted to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. The problem is the nature of capitalism forces you to behave in ways that are not always focused on solving the problem. Okay? And so, interestingly, I'll give you a very good example. Nobody will remember Google Plus. Remember Google Plus? Yeah, this was Google's attempt to compete with Facebook at the time, right? It was the one product, I believe, in my early years at Google that was not built because it was solving a problem. It was built just because social was important and we didn't want Facebook to grow quickly. And it sucked. It was a horrible product, right? While everything else that we've built, we built because of a passion to make things better, right? And that's a very interesting way of looking at life. I know this sounds, again, hopelessly romantic, but if you work with life, life itself with its mighty wheels helps you, right? So if you're doing something that life wants you to do, it actually feels horrendously effortless. It's just so easy, because life itself throws something your way, right? If you're working against life, trying to steal from people or use their attention to monetize them or whatever, okay? You have to be very clever and you have to work very hard, and you can always feel there is a tidal wave ahead of you, okay? And I think that to me was probably my biggest, that to me is very much who I have always been, but to fit in a place that's actually really successful, that believes in those principles, completely anchored me in what I do right now, in terms of, speaking my heart completely openly, knowing that some people will, make fun of me in the comments, or other people, may oppose me or be angry at me or whatever. I don't care, right? I care that I've worked so hard on my heart, so that when I say something, it actually is not, none of what I said today is true. We said truth is very difficult to find out, right? But it's true to me. And if it's true to me, then I have every right to say it gently and politely. And hopefully I'll either be corrected so that I know better, or, okay, or I'll help someone see something they didn't see. And and so when you get that, you understand where technology got wrong. Okay. And in my mind, I remember vividly, I was so fortunate because someone I respect very much, Demis Hassabis, who is the CEO of DeepMind at Google. First day he joined, we were in a vice president meeting somewhere, and he sat next to me at lunch, right? And, I don't know if I was the first person he sat next to or whatever, but I consider that he was, he sat next to me the first time. And he talks to me about those incredible things they were building at DeepMind. They were teaching AI to play Atari games. And I'm a video gamer, and I'm a very serious geek. And I'm like, that's it. This is heaven, right? And the results were just so eye-opening. And everyone, all of us would look at this and go like, my God, it's happening. And we were celebrating so much. And then some point in that process, tech doesn't deliver the promise anymore. Okay. So, mobile phones, Nokia used to say connecting people. Mobile phones are separating people now. Okay. Dating apps are supposed to help you find someone to love. No, they're actually really making sure that you don't. Okay. And somehow maybe at a point in time, the promise was genuinely the intention, but then it's missed. And I think when it's missed, the capitalist system doesn't allow you to pivot anymore. And I remember vividly that 2016 was the moment where I realized, oh, hold on, this AI thing, it has the promise to make everything amazing, but not with the current morality of humanity. And that, suddenly you realize that the promise might be missed, and that, somehow you have a moral obligation to stand up and say, by the way, you don't have to be a Google executive. You can be, a musician in a jazz bar, and you have the moral objective to share that view with others, because that's the only way that humanity will wake up.
I really appreciate you bringing up this idea of heart and the work that you've done on your own heart. And I wanted to ask you a question, and I want to do it with a loving heart and a full heart. I understand you lost your son.
Habibi Ali, yes.
And I wonder, I know that it's been a guiding light for your work. And what do you think he's teaching you?
I think it's been a guiding light for my life, but not the loss as much as the presence. So you see, the thing that people mostly talk about is losing Ali. Ali was 21 when we lost him. Medical malpractice, completely unexpected at his prime. Like, he was unbelievable, like truly an amazing young man, the pride of a father, really. But what people don't talk about as often is that I had 21 years with him. And that's actually really the core of the story, right? The core of the story in my mind, and I hope I don't feel emotional about it. So Ali and I are very serious video gamers. I'm very serious. Now I am probably as good as he used to be. I know it doesn't look right when I'm in my late 50s, but I'm the one that killed you yesterday, basically. Just think about it this way. If any video gamers are listening to us. Ali was legendary. Like, he truly was the best video gamer ever, right? And every video gamer knows that, if you're playing a campaign together or whatever, there are bits of the video game that are so challenging that if both players went in, we will lose the game. And in those games, what normally used to happen is that Ali would walk in first, get as much of the objective achieved, and then with an easier game ahead, he would let me walk in and try to get the rest of the objective done. And very frequently, he would be telling me, no, Papa, look left, or, he would take my controller and actually do that last bit himself. And for some reason, I know maybe it's just a story that I'm telling myself. For some reason, I believe that this is what happened July 2014. It's not a secret that our world is not in a good place. It's not. And somehow I believe that the mission, I was a businessman, selling deals that are billions of dollars worth and, cashing my stocks at the end of the year, and everything was fine, right? And nothing would have moved me to write Solve for Happy, or to write Scary Smart, or to write Unstressable, to really address important topics that really matter, okay, other than losing Ali. And I tend to believe that, I had a near-death experience myself, so that scenario of sort of being given a choice before you leave our world has happened to me. And so I sort of can picture Ali in that moment being asked, do you want to go back and live another 20 years, or do you want to leave and give a chance to 80 million people to be happy? And I think he made a choice. And then with that part of the video game cleared out, I feel that he then sat next to me very closely, as a matter of fact, guiding me in ways that again, I'm not a hopeless romantic, but they're unmistakable messages that I get at certain points in time, fully in my heart, that basically tell me to do things differently. Like, stop writing about happiness and start writing about AI in 2020. And I don't know if we will succeed. I don't know if, but video gamers really, truly don't want to win the game. They want to become the best gamer they can be. And so that's all that we've been doing since he left, is that we've been trying to make a tiny bit of a wake-up call, a difference, that you're not supposed to live a life that's miserable. Happiness is your birthright. You're not supposed to live a life that is stressed. Unstressable is your natural state of being. You're not supposed to accept an unelected renegade to decide your life for you. Okay? You're supposed to have an opinion. You're supposed to say, I want my world to look this way. And I know I'm not going to make any difference at all. I truly know that I'm too small for this big world. Okay? But I know that if our listeners today found something that inspired them, and then they took it and told two people who told two people who told two people, we will reach 1 billion happy, the objective, in no time at all. Right? And I can imagine that if we achieve the 1 billion happy, if enough of us prioritize what matters, then AI will take that and magnify it. And so, will it happen? I don't know, but I know for a fact that I tried. And I know that I wouldn't have tried if he hadn't left. I would have still been inventing technology, and I would have still been making a lot of money, and I would have still been wasting it on things that I don't need.
Thank you for sharing that. What's the lesson that's taken you the longest to learn?
Lessons are endless, huh? So, you tend to believe when you're a child that you look at your grandpa and you say, he figured it out. Oh my God, I'm lost. I'm completely lost all the time. Okay. And every third week I figure something out, and right? And then I realized that by figuring that thing out, there are two other things that I didn't figure out, and I work on them, and it's just endless, really. But I tend to believe that's what the game is about, actually. It's about finding the best version of yourself. I have to say that I've always, not always, but since I worked with my son Ali Habibi on our happiness model that was in the first book, Solve for Happy, um, I've been always one of the happiest people you will ever see. I was calm. I'm almost always contented. You know, I'm so lucky. I'm so appreciative of my life, even after losing him. Right. So interestingly, that should make me, you know, remarkable in this world. Hmm? But recently I realized that I've never actually really lived. It's quite interesting when you think about it, that I'm always calm and contented. Um, I'm always peaceful about everything, but that I don't really savor my food as I should. I don't. Uh, I didn't usually enjoy conversations like this, like I am right now, right? In my past, I would go like, okay, how many people will this reach? How do I say it the right way? How do I make sure that people get the benefit? You know, how do I be honest in what I say? You know, targets, 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 targets. Now I'm like, how do I have the freaking time of my life? And it took me 58 years to learn that.
Mm.
There is a big difference between being calm and contented, and literally jumping up and down of joy, hmm, because life is so amazing. And maybe age helps you because, you know, I had this last year was probably one of the most difficult years of my life. I lost my sister, my brother, and my mother 2 months apart. And they really meant so much to me. So I sat with one of my best friends, who is a very direct young lady uh, who, you know, I was talking philosophically about how vulnerable life is. And she looked at me and she said, "You'll be fine. The world needs you. You're going to live until you're 80 something. I don't know if I will or not." And then she paused for a minute and she said, "But you only have a few good years in you." I was like, "What? Why would you say that?" And she said, "No, seriously, remember those road trips that you always spoke about? You know, one of my hobbies is I love to restore classic cars to the point where they are as the day they came out of the factory, and then sell them and lose money on them every single time. I mean, there's no money in classic cars, but there's no money in playing golf either. So it's okay to, you know, to live your passion, and you know, not everything has to be about money. But then, you know, some of my lifetime dreams have been to go out and drive and just enjoy those beautiful pieces of engineering. And, you know, I never had the time. I always was on another podcast or in another conversation or
Mm.
writing another book or, you know, finishing another deal or whatever. And she was like, "You probably have 10 good years where you can take long road trips at most. And by the way, if you want to do that in a sports car, you have 3." It's like, damn you, but she's right. She's right. And you know what's even more shocking is that it doesn't matter if you're in your late 50s, okay, or in your early 20s. The truth is, the most valuable resource you've ever been given is your heartbeats. It's actually the only resource you've been given. And you trade those heartbeats constantly, for whatever it is that you think is worth it. So you give, you know, um, probably you say you have 4 billion heartbeats in a lifetime, you give 1.7 of those to work. No, probably more, around 2. No, say 1.7 to work, 1.5 to sleep. Hmm? maybe a few 100 million to cleaning your bum and washing your hair. And, it's quite interesting that you're eventually going to end up, for someone my age, at best, if you count it, I'd probably have a 70% left. Sorry, 17, 18% left. Okay. Again, I'm going to have to spend quite a few of them talking on podcasts or writing or whatever. So if you had 100 million heartbeats left, how would you spend them? And most highly driven people like myself would say, I'd write another book so that it remains. Recently, in this new season of my life, I probably sit and do absolutely nothing. Just be in nature. Like, enough books. You know what I mean? And it is quite interesting that it takes you that long to fully live. If there is anything I would want to have learned earlier, it would have been to live while I was alive. I could have achieved exactly the same.
Wow. What do you hope your legacy is?
Oh, I don't care about legacy. No, nobody cares about. I'll be dead. You see, this is. I hope you don't be offended by this, but there are some very interesting concepts that are very Western invented. Okay, they're invented. I call them, concepts or problems of privilege. Who cares about legacy? I'm not going to be here. What I care about is that I have tried the absolute best I could. As I said, most real video gamers, and life is a video game. I have a chapter in Alive about that, like a serious simulation video game. Real video gamers want nothing. They don't want to win the game. They don't want other gamers to say, by the way, when they used to game, they were the best. They just want to become the absolute best gamer they have the potential to become. So real gamers, we don't play to win. Ali Habibi, Allah yarhamak Ali. Ali, when we were playing, in my corporate years, I was very driven. So, even as I spend time with my child and we're playing a video game, I would go to the right, run to the end of the level as fast as I can. And Ali would put his controller down and go like, Papa, what are you doing? Well, why? And I'm like, the end of the level is there. Let's go there. And he goes like, who wants to go to the end of the level? We're playing, right? Think about it. Your life at the end of the level, you die. You don't want that. You just want to live, right? And he would go to the parts where there is explosions and smoke. I'm like, Ali, that doesn't make any sense. This is the most difficult part of the level. And he says, yeah, fun, right? And it's quite interesting, huh? He basically would go there, in his own words, because this is where you develop and grow. As a gamer, when you go to the difficult parts of the game, those are the parts that make you a better gamer. And so after he left our world, I sort of wanted to honor everything we've done together. So took my guitars back out, took my game console out and played again and so on. And I started to play like a very different gamer. I'd walk into the difficult bits of the level, and then when I'm done with them, I would reset and play them again, and then reset and play them again. The only thing you want is to become the absolute best gamer you have the potential to become. Right? Whether that leaves legacy or doesn't leave legacy, whether that makes you rich or doesn't make you rich, whether that makes you loved or doesn't make you loved, that's not the topic. This entire journey of life is about that intent to become what you have the potential to become. And if you're done with that, that's it. You can leave.
We have the privilege of I don't know if you're familiar with Alan Watts's work.
Oh, I love Alan Watts' work, yeah.
And he talks about nobody dances to get to the end of the song. It's not why you dance.
Exactly.
You're not trying to rush through the song. And I really appreciate the way you described that for us. Mo, you're writing books, you're having an impact, you're hoping to connect with one person at a time who tells two people about happiness. What's next for you, and how do we stay connected to your work?
So I have two very big projects this year. My very last hurrah, if you want, on artificial intelligence before it's up to AI, basically. I have a documentary that comes out, hopefully in Canada, I hope, in the Toronto Film Festival around September, called Scary Smart. And then I have my book Alive, which really is sort of my very raw view of how we ended up here. And as I said, I'm writing Alive with an AI. So Trixie is my co-author, but I'm also releasing it. So it will be released finally along with the documentary in September. But for now, I'm releasing it on Substack. So basically, I release a bit every week, and then 3,000, 4,000 people would read it and give me feedback, which is an incredible and very humbling experience, to be honest. So I'm writing it with an AI and with the community at the same time. And that's a very almost addictive for an author, an addictive experience. So these are my top priorities on this side. On my happiness work, my top priority is Unstressable, which was my last book, written with a wonderful co-author, Alice Law. I'm the geek, if you want. So I look at stress from an algorithmic point of view. Alice is a beautifully feminine soul who looks at the softer sides of it. Spiritual stress, emotional stress, physical stress, and so on. And so that mix has proved to be quite effective. And I think the world is becoming so stressed. So we're trying to get our best work out in terms of workshops and talks and our membership on stressable.com and so on. So these are taking a lot of my time and attention. Other than that, I'm actually really taking a step back. I feel that I'm going through a new season where I'm trying to take a step back and be an example of how do we live in that coming future, which I think is an interesting, unresolved, interesting challenge for me. But you have to imagine that this future, the long-term utopia, will also come with challenges, because we humans are not used to waking up in the morning and having everything done for us by AI. And so I'm really experimenting with that idea of what would be the purpose beyond the apparent purpose, if you want, and how is it to fully live. So that would probably be my next work. If people can find me on social media, I don't swipe, but I answer every message that I get. And I try. I keep saying that, but it's becoming almost impossible to answer all of them. But I do answer hundreds of messages, every other day or so. And so it's Mo_Gawdat on Instagram, M Gawdat on LinkedIn, and Mo Gawdat Official on YouTube, and then my website, mogawdat.com.
Mo, I found this conversation so rewarding. I really appreciate the time you've spent with us and just the way you've walked us through this journey.
It's been a joy. I really felt that I enjoyed this. Thank you so much for having me and for letting me blabber away what's in my heart without filters. So thank you.
Thank you.